Alright, so on the bench today we have a Philco model 40-135 from 1940. Philcos are always easy to tell the year because usually the model number is two numbers, and those are the year, and then the submodel number, I guess. So anyway, 40-135 means it's from 1940, and I think they went back that way until 36 or 37, from 36, 37 on up until the late 1950s. I think they changed the model designation to just other numbers, and by that time Philco was pretty much on its last gasp anyway. In the 1950s and 60s they were really going downhill. So anyway, luckily this is a really nice pre-war set. It's in pretty good condition. It's got a few scratches here and there, but it's a very nice original example of this radio. From my reading, it looks like there was two different models of this radio. There was a 40-130 that was just like this one, except it didn't have the presets here, and there were actually a couple of different models that were very similar. Let me illustrate here. This is the Philco radio book by Ron Ramirez. Very excellent book for referencing any Philco radio that's pre-war, because this one goes until 1942, which is when they stopped production for World War II. Actually 1941 was, they had the 1942 models out, but when World War II hit they stopped production. So anyway, this is for the model 130, 135, 40-130, 40-135, 40-170, 4503, 4506, 4525, and 4526, and the 4527. They all use similar chassis. The band coverage is 540 to 15 kc. Band 2 is 1.5 to 3.3 megahertz. They ran on 115 volts. 6 tubes. Controls were on and off volume, tone, tuning selector, band switch, and models 40-135, which is what we're working on, and these other models here featured 6 push buttons for automatic tuning, which is that right there. And you can see appendix 13-5 for the tube diagrams. So our model number is included in that, so I'll flip over there. And here is our tube lineup. Consists of a 7C7, 7A8, 7B7, 7C6, 7B5, and 7Y4. So those are all Philco Loctile tubes. I'm not too in love with Philco Loctile tubes. They had a lot of connection problems, and the pins are really small and they tend to get dirty, and usually if you get a Loctile set with Loctile tubes in it, you're gonna usually end up with some sort of connection issues where you got to clean all the tube sockets and the pins and all that. So that's a downside to the Loctile tubes, although the military used them quite a bit during World War II. So anyway, alright, so let's get started on this set. I have really very little information on this. This was sent in by Brian, the owner of these two sets here that we've already done in previous videos. He informed me that the volume knob, he tried to attempt to clean the volume control on it. I guess it was scratchy or something like that, and he went in and tried to clean it, and he said he hadn't been able to get anything since. so it quit working on him after he attempted to clean this volume control. Now when the radio came in, this volume knob was off of it, and it appeared to me that somebody did a poor attempt to replace this volume control. It must have been one of just a round shaft one, so I guess they dremelled it out or something flat so this would fit on there. So I don't know if there's really a lot we can do about that, but we'll see what we got to work with. So I'm gonna put this thing on the variac and see what we get. Alright, so it looks like somebody's put a modern power cord on this set with a polarized power plug on it. Looks like a more modern power cord. So I'm gonna start this thing out around 40 volts and I'm gonna plug it in. He said he recapped this radio, but you know, I don't know what all has been done to this thing, and so I want to kind of monitor the voltage and the amp, the watts and all that sort of stuff. Make sure we're not going to blow anything up, because this ain't my set, so I can't just put this and start this out, plug it in the wall and see if it blows up type of deal. It ain't mine, so I don't want to mess up somebody else's radio. So we'll go ahead and turn it on. And 5.3 watts. Seems to be dropping as the tube filaments are probably warming up. Let's go ahead and crank this thing up a little bit more. Put it up around 50 something volts. I don't see any smoke coming out. Got dial light illumination coming up. I don't know if you can see that. Probably not because of the reflection, but I can see it from the back end of the radio. Alright, no smoke and fire yet, so let's go up a little bit higher. About 75 volts. And 18 watts. That's dropping off to about 11 now. About 75 volts. That dial light illumination. I don't really see a whole lot of tube illumination. I think he said some of the tubes were not lighting up, so that could be a lot of our problem. No smoke yet, so let's go ahead and crank it on up to about 90 volts. See if we can get anything on the broadcast band. We'll put it around 1240 or excuse me, 1340. A local station on that one, pretty close to that, so if it works at all I should be able to pick up something. The only thing I'm getting is dial light illumination. Don't really see a whole lot of activity down there, so it'd probably be better to take this thing apart. Go ahead and crank it on up to 115 volt. I'm starting to get static from the speaker. No real reception yet. I'm putting it on here because it says dial. I got that pressed in. I've had some of these be kind of tricky. You don't have the right button pressed in and it won't do anything. So that's why I'm trying them all. Now we'll go with our original selection, dial. And I'm getting nothing, so other than a little crackling from the speaker, this thing's pretty much dead. So let's go ahead and dive into this thing and see what we got to work with, what's going on with it. Alright, so here's the set with the back cover removed, and I already see something out of place. This looks like a bulb light diffuser laying back here in the wire antenna part. I'm gonna have to try to get that out of there. And that goes on one of our dial light bulbs. Should go on one of our dial light bulbs. That's not supposed to be laying back in here like that. I would imagine that's probably a product of shipping it. Alright, so we got our dial light diffuser out of the back and the back cover removed. I just removed the antenna screws, and then these back screws here, this one had 4 screws in it, but they were not original screws. They looked like there were some newer Phillips head looking gold screws. I guess they were brass or something. So anyway, we got those removed, and so now we're going to remove our chassis by removing the screws underneath for it, which are underneath here. It looks like we got 4 chassis screws, 2 here and 2 here. Alright, so here's our chassis out of our cabinet here, and here's our dial light that was missing its diffuser. It's come loose from up here around the dial scale, goes right there, and that diffuser goes over the top of it there. Shines a light over on our dial scale there to illuminate it, so we'll put that back. Matter of fact, I may take these off and keep track of them while I'm working on it so they don't get lost, because if you lose something like that, you can pretty much hang it up. You ain't gonna find another one unless you can make it. Alright, so a common problem on these sets of this era was this wiring they used was some kind of rubber, and it really disintegrated really terribly on these sets, and I've seen people have to completely rewire these with this type of wiring. So the best thing to do is just leave it the hell alone, basically, if you can. If you can get by with not disturbing that wiring, that's really the best thing, or else you're going to be rewiring this, because this stuff, this wire casing on this stuff is really brittle, and it usually uses solid core wire, and that, you know, you're just going to have a bare wire and no protection, so you're going to end up having to redo all that. So best just to leave that alone. It looks like he's gone through here and recapped this, but didn't rebuild this Bakelite block capacitor here, and didn't replace this capacitor up under there. Although that may not be a critical capacitor, but looks like that had gotten forgot about. And this Bakelite block here is the across the line capacitor, and that's going to keep line noise and everything out of your reception. That's basically a line noise suppressor, usually in the 0.05 microfarad range, and so, you know, this thing will need to be rebuilt. These are a pain to rebuild because they have that sticky black tar that's inside of them that's always fun to get out, and somehow I always end up getting that stuff all over my hands and on my clothes and all that sort of mess. So it can definitely be pretty messy. Alright, so as far as troubleshooting, I wanted to use the signal tracer effect to see if we were getting a signal into the radio and then through the various stages of the radio. And what I've come up with so far is we've got signal pretty much going all the way through the radio, and then it gets to the first audio stage and somewhat stops. But we've got signal coming into here. Or we did. But we got a signal coming all the way up into here through the various stages until we get it right about here. Okay, this is coming out of our IF transformer, and which is our secondary IF transformer. We've got it going in. And then this is it coming out.
David Hill with McLaughlin Forward, and I say less.
Okay, we've got it coming out of the IF can, transformer can, whatever. So this is the plate. We've got a little bit of voices coming out and a whole lot of humming. You got a bunch of humming coming out of the speaker. Now the first problem was they had the wrong tube in it. I don't know if you can see that, but that is a 7C5. This is the tube that was in there. The schematic calls for a 7C6. So I grabbed one out of my stash, and I do have boatloads of these tubes. I got them in a lot of tubes, or multiple lots of tubes, that was being sold online as just a mix lot. They didn't know whether they worked or what, but I got a whole bunch of them. So I put the 7C6 tube, the correct tube, in the slot, and now we're getting a hum through the speaker and a little bit of activity, a little bit of signal, but not a whole lot. I mean, just barely can hear. In fact, really, you can't hear anything now. If I turned it over on this stronger station, you could probably...
Revivals, missions, conferences. We love to go and be with God's people, but not so we can be saved.
Barely hear something there. So, we've got some sort of issue going on in here. Signal coming in and not hardly anything coming out. Alright, so going through our power supply section of this radio, this filter capacitor right here, this is a boo-boo right here. He's got a 22 microfarad 250 volt capacitor in here. Now the capacitors that originally came in here were 400 volt capacitors. This is a big no-no. I took a voltage reading right off the positive side of this cap, and we got 275 volts. And that's just ordinary voltage. If it surged up, you know, I mean, just regular everyday voltage is 275 volts, and you've already exceeded the voltage capacity by 25 volts. That's maximum. So this here needs to be replaced with a 400 volt cap. You got to watch your voltages when you put in capacitors. You can't underrate your capacitors, or that thing will blow, and it'll take out the transformer with it. Alright, so I got it playing, but
I put you on hold, and this might
there are some issues here.
I can help you along the way. Hey.
Remember me telling you earlier in the video about that wiring.
Coming right back, we're going to do our digital...
This is where it comes out of the IF can into the tube. Because basically the wiring has started fraying down here, and it's shorting.
Every way that average people can and should back up the data on their computers.
A lot of this is shorting.
iDrive is simply the best cloud backup service there is. 4 big reasons why.
disintegrated.
First, it's the easiest to use. I back up everything. Online computers, smartphones.
So all this here, all this wiring that goes in and out of this IF can, all that needs to be redone. That's part of the problem. I think there's some other shorting issues in this radio somewhere with this wiring, but he already put some heat shrink tubing on this from here to the volume control, and I think this is shorting out too. So you know, you just got bare wire grounding against the chassis, and you're just, you know, you're just gonna ground your signal completely out, and you're not going to get anything. And so that's what I believe is going on here. I clip leaded in a old capacitor here. I'm going to have to order a higher voltage capacitor for the filter cap that goes here. That, because that 250 volt, that ain't going to work in here. Alright, this is the third time. Let's see if this camera is going to cooperate. It keeps coming up with some internal memory errors. So anyway, it's the next day and I have the day off. It's a holiday. It's Memorial Day. So while we got our capacitors on order, 'cause I got some wiring issues here in the second IF transformer. I think I touched on this briefly in the video yesterday, but I want to go ahead and show you. We got some of this brittle rubber wiring that they used in these sets. And it's really quite bad. If you could see that flaking off there, it's pretty much doing the same thing, but right at the base of this transformer where these wires go in down here. So I need to make note that this excuse me, this yellow wire goes to here. You got a red wire that goes here. The red wire goes here. These videos sometimes are a reference for me when I'm working on these things too, and then you got this heat shrinked green blue wire, or whatever you want to call it, going it's blue on the schematic, but anyway, it goes to the volume control, comes out here, or goes here and then goes to the volume control. Need to make a note of that. And this black wire goes here by this yellowish resistor, pink, yellow, black, and yellow, whatever that means. There's a silver band on it too. Anyway, so that's where our wiring's at. That's our 4 wires, and I'm going to pull this IF can here, take these 2 screws out, and probably just going to cut the connections. Our green wire goes here. So we have a reference for all this. I'm going to pull these screws here, and I'm going to pull this out and rewire all this so we don't have any issues with shorting out down here, and that's what's causing our signal to not work properly. Alright, I'm going to illustrate what the problem is.
Big Ticket with Mark Malkin on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to podcasts.
You ready for this? No.
Yeah, it's shorting out.
Switch it up. Start doing my own stunts. So you wanted to go straight for the helicopter.
This wire takes out the signal. This one does too. So yeah, these need to be rewired, which is what we're about to do now. Alright, so here's an example of what I'm talking about. That green one was shorting out really bad, and he had this one here goes to the volume control, and it was heat shrink, but it's just bare wire grounding out. That red one's in about the best shape, but that's not really saying a whole lot. So anyway, we need to put some new wiring in here, and so that's why I went ahead and pulled this IF can so we can take care of this issue. Alright, so here's our little setup with it out of the metal can over there. We've got 4 wires coming out of this thing, and they're all falling apart because they're 70 years old, but it's 70-year-old rubber. Modern PVC wiring, I guess, is pretty much what they use now. It'll hold up a lot better than this stuff. So anyway, I need to get this taken apart. I don't know if I have all these colors, so we may have to improvise. Alright, so I got them all replaced except for this one here, which I'm about to replace, but we've got a 47k ohm resistor here. It checks out okay. It's I don't know, 51k or something, so I'm going to go ahead and replace this, even though it may be okay. It's not particularly an accessible part without taking all this crap apart again, and you know, if it drifts or something like that, it may be hard to diagnose. So you know, if the alignment won't touch up or whatever because it's out of spec, it may make it difficult on somebody in the future. So you know, usually whenever I find parts like this and I can replace them, I'm just go ahead and replace them, you know, just to make life easier on somebody else, or who knows, for maybe me if it comes back. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and just replace this 47k while I'm in here. Alright, so here's our finished product. Got our resistor and all of our wires here resoldered, so we should be ready to go back in our can and back in the radio. Alright, we're all done. We got our wiring put back in here and rewired. I had all the original colors, so we it just ended up tacking this in. I thought I had enough wire to go all the way to the volume knob, but I didn't. So anyway, we got these all put back in, and so now let's fire it up and see if it works. Turn off that light so I don't pick up that. Well, sounds good to me. It's 970 with Billy Idol there, but picking up a little bit of electrical buzz, probably coming from the air conditioner in here. But yep, it seems like that worked just fine, so hopefully that'll take care of our shorting problem. Alright, we're going to check the tubes and see what kind of tubes we're dealing with here. This is a 7C7 RF tube. About 640, so okay, but not the strongest. Alright, this is our 7A8. This is a detector tube. Almost 700 there. Not too bad. Alright, this is our 7B7, our IF tube. It's a little over 600, about 620. So, or 610. About 610 out of 1,000. So, a little weak, but still good. Alright, this is my 7C6 that I put in here because he had the wrong tube in here. I believe it was a 7C5, something along those lines, and this one checks really good. It's about 720, so not bad. Alright, this is a 7B5 audio output tube. This is the one that's in the set. He actually sent me 3 extra tubes with the radio, so we'll check. He's got another 7B5 in there. We'll check that one. This one checking a little weak. It's about 500 a little over 500, right in the middle of the weak category, so it's functional, but it's a little on the weak side. Alright, and here's the other 7B5 here, and it's well over 800, so yeah, this one's definitely the better of the two. This is a National Union. It's kind of dirty on the top there, but that's the one I'm gonna put in the radio. And we'll check the rectifier, but I'm gonna check the other tubes that he sent, just so for his reference. Alright, this is our 7Y4 rectifier tube, checking about 620, so it's okay. It's not great, but it'll work. Alright, and this is a 7Y4 rectifier tube that he had in the bag, and it's marginal, so we'll leave the one that was in the set in there. Alright, and this is a 7A8, 7 Alpha 8 that he had in the bag, and it's almost new old stock there. It's almost 900, so I'm going to put this one in the set. It's quite a bit better than the one that's in there. The one that's in there is good, but this one's a lot better. Alright, this is a 7C5. This was the one that was put in as the first audio tube, and it was the wrong one. So this is the one that was in the set. It's almost new old stock, pretty much new old stock. It's like 900. So yeah, I'm just gonna put it in the bag with the rest of them, but it's not the correct tube for the radio. Alright, so went out to the mailbox yesterday, and our 400 volt 15 microfarad replacement capacitors came in the mail. So we're gonna put one of these in right where the clip leads are at, where I had one clip leaded in for temporary use, and get that capacitor in there so there's no issues with the power supply. Alright, I got our what was a 12 microfarad, but you know, he put a 20 in, and I got a 15 in there, a 15 at 400 volts. So that was a success. So the only thing I really want to do before we wrap this up, I want to rebuild this Bakelite block capacitor here. I've shown other videos on it, but I'll show you a brief, you know, what you do on these. It's pretty messy, but it's the across the line capacitor. It's got 2.01 microfarads in it, and then they both just ground. So just ground in two different circuits there, filtering out the line noise coming in. Alright, so I usually do these the lazy way. I don't just solder all this crap, and you know, it takes too much time. And so basically what I usually do on these is I unbolt them like this with the screw there. Don't forget your little your grounding washer there, your bite washer. It's going to fall out from up underneath the other side, from underneath the bottom here. Just make sure you catch it when it comes out, because you'll need to reuse that. These are basically a terminal strip with some capacitors inside of here, and this stuff's always got this nasty tar goo stuff on the bottom of it. So what you're going to need to do is get you a heat gun and heat this up, and then just pop that out. It should pop out, but don't pry against this plastic phenolic piece here. If you do, it will crack it and break it. Best thing to do is just kind of pick at it, get it soft, go around the edges of it with a heat gun, and kind of pry it out from the center. Or if you got to pry against something, pry against this more sturdier thick piece, but I wouldn't, you know, try not to pry on it. And get it to come out, you're basically going to rip the capacitors out of here, because they're soldered here. If you want to desolder them, you can. I usually don't, because once you pop them out, those little thin wires are going to break anyway. So you just desolder it when you get it out, and then just take your 2.0 .01s, which is what this calls for. Some of these are different. I think there's some information online involving the numbers as to what value they are. There's some resources online for that, but our schematic clearly says the value, so I'm just going to go ahead and change those. This is nothing more than this is ground, so you're going to put, you know, 2 of the leads on ground, and then 1 lead here and the other lead here on, you know, they're 2 different 0.1 capacitors. So it's pretty simple. Just 2 of the leads here, 1 lead here, and 1 lead here, and that's pretty much all there is to it. And it just filters out some of the line noise that comes in off the power line. Alright, so I have dug out our black tar goop, and might I add, do not get this stuff on your clothes. If you do, it will not come out. It's pretty nasty stuff. So, you know, like I said, just heat it up. Make sure you put on a pair of gloves before you grab this. It's going to be hot. I know that's kind of common sense, but I just, you know, want to throw that in there. Make sure you put gloves on, because when you heat this up, it's going to be really hot. And these things are pretty much going to come out of here. They got really thin lead wires on them, and they're pretty much, you know, will come right out. If you just pry on them a little bit, they'll pop right out. So let me get the rest of this stuff cleaned up, get that other capacitor out of there, and I'll show you what I'm going to do next. Alright, so I got our tar cleaned out the other side, and I got our holes clear over here. Got our old leads removed. And basically, it's just, you know, you're just going to want to clean the bottom of this out till it's empty. And then what we're going to do is we're going to insert our capacitors here. We're going to put 2 leads together, and then the other 2 leads are going to go to each. Both of the leads are going to go to the ground lug here, which is where the screw goes, and then 1 lead here, and the other lead from the other capacitor here. Alright, and that's what we're talking about. Right there. Now I'm going to push them in a little bit further, down below where they're flush, and then we'll solder them on the top end. Alright, we're all soldered up on the top side, and there's our finished product on the bottom side. And when you mount it, it'll be just like the original. You won't be able to see the bottom of it. Alright, we've got our screw inserted, and don't forget your bite washer on the bottom. That's what grounds it to the chassis and allows it to get a good electrical connection. Alright, and the last little issue with this thing is that he wanted to straighten out. I've had to put it back in the case to figure this problem out, but this is a replacement volume potentiometer, and problem is this thing's just a little bit too long, and it doesn't really grab. You can see where they ground it in 2 different places. It's too low here, but this second catch seems to work pretty good. So what I think I'll do is I'm going to trim a little bit of this off, and then go back in and try and flatten some of this out. But I think I'll just try and trim this end off a little bit and see what we got from there. I don't want to take too much off and this not work, but I may could flatten this out back ways a little bit. I think I might have a Dremel tool I can do that with, but I'm not going to be able to do this on camera, but I'll show you the end result. Alright, so I ground this thing down flat here, and then just ground it a little bit more up this way so the knob would slide on. And it seems like the knob slides on until it hits the wood, so you know you want to pull back a little bit so you don't scratch it, but it's not coming off. You can pull it off. It's not just going to fall off, so that should work, and it won't stick out too far like it did before. So that looked like it took care of it. Alright, all back in the case, and I've had this thing playing for about 4 to 5 hours. I had to go and do a bunch of things, and after I put it back together and verified this knob didn't come off or anything like that, I just left it playing so it see how well it was, everything was going to hold up before I ship this out back to Brian, its owner. We're on 970 and I have the long wire antenna hooked up, which is, a lot of people ask what kind of antenna I use. It's a 285-foot beverage antenna. Just Google beverage antenna. It's a excellent receiving antenna, and I've got it strung up across the top of my, I got a wooden privacy fence, and I've got it going straight down, and then it L's over. It like L's over in the back part of the property and goes and terminates to a resistor, which is hooked to ground. So you can just Google beverage antenna. That's basically what I have, and it's fed with 300 ohm twin lead wire like you get on the TV antenna. So anyway, now a lot of this, one thing I've noticed with this radio on the top end of the band, here all my local channels come in, you know, I got one on 1240 and one on 1340, and 1290 went off the air, so that's gone, but a lot of them blend together, and 1340 is literally, the transmitter's a mile up the road, so there's not very good selectivity on the top end of the band. You hear that a lot of these stations repeating themselves several times.
When you sign up for a year, ExpressVPN.com.
You can hear them blending together. Now it doesn't do that when it's on the Bakelite antenna, but it does it on the long wire. Like it's overloading the front end.
I didn't know anything about it. I would never have done that.
No matter your technology, small business, do big things.
Do this, and there'll be nothing but joy and gladness
That's
for you.
1340.
Your wife, your children, your home, your business, and your work.
That's 1340.
Nothing be done in your own strength. You need the Lord.
And it's way across the dial.
Digital audio. For I am not ashamed on your schedule. Driving, exercise.
And there's a mix.
The dunamis of God.
There's 1340 again.
Unto salvation. To the Jew first.
My favorite digital goddess.
Once you get down below 1100, they don't do it anymore.
You know, the relationships that they have with their family. Right. Because everybody...
Very slowly, and he says nothing.
But it's got a pretty good receive because I'm able to pick up 770, which is up in Rockingham, North Carolina. It's about 2 hours from me. And normally I have to have a shortwave receiver to pick it up.
He'll give you victory.
Let's go, girl.
There's some country station, don't know where that's at. That's 970 where we started out at.
Gideon, defensive end. Gideon is back in.
Yeah, that's 770 out of Rockingham. They play a lot of oldies on that station. Pretty good station. Trying to get it in without all that camera noise. That's up in North Carolina too. I think that might be close to Fayetteville.
If there's a way to use public Wi-Fi privately, get Norton Secure VPN. That's Norton Secure.
I think that's 560 out of Columbia. It's kind of weak. Yeah, Lumberton, that's up in North Carolina.
Only at Lumberton and only during the inventory.
Lily having some issues from the far side, gives up command of the pump.
Ain't quite late enough for DX. It's almost 7 though. Alright, that's back on 970. And the police band basically goes from the top of the, well, top of the old AM band, 1.5 to 3.3, and I scanned that earlier. There's not really much on that. You may pick up a little bit of shortwave on there, but it was mostly repeats of 1340 again, so it does work, but there's just not much on it right now. At night you're gonna be a lot more likely to pick up something on those lower bands. So anyway, with that, got another old radio working, and hopefully he'll enjoy it for a long time to come. So appreciate everybody watching.